Hey everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of Season 3 of Snowpiercer, I've got you covered just at the tab in the upper right-hand corner, and it'll take you right to it. Now, Season 4 picks up almost 1 year after Season 3. Layton and New Eden are not exactly thriving, but they're on their way. It's been a slow build and a slow process, but they have a nice little community. And they're all preparing for the return of Snowpiercer. In fact, they've been trying to get in contact with them, but that's been tough, as has growing vegetables and electricity and all of it, but it's a new community, so there are going to be growing pains, and Layton and the rest of the town council, which includes Ruth, Roach, Javi, Alex, Josie, and Layton, and they're all doing their best. They always get together and they discuss the issues in the town and how they're going to address it and how they're going to make New Eden a better community. But while they're trying to make the best of this situation, because the reality is New Eden hasn't really lived up to the hype. It was supposed to be this utopian society. In reality, it's a bunch of train cars and it's really cold outside. But for people like Layton, they look at it like this is a positive because at least you have fresh air. You can leave the train. For people like Osweiler, he's had a hard time acclimating. He feels like he was duped. In fact, he got so mad that he took a tent and he moved up to the mountains. He's not even living in the cars anymore. There's also Alex, who doesn't really have any interest in being a part of the town council. She's more interested in her data and her research, but it seems to be having a little bit of a negative effect. While the town council does meet, she's up there looking over seismic data when she starts to have a nosebleed, and you get the impression that this isn't the first time she's had one of these. But Alex is just steadfast on continuing her research, and her best friend is a pet bird named Mr. Sprinkles, who she uses to actually get this research. He's a dedicated scientist, according to her. Yeah, New Eden is like many communities. It has its issues, but it does have a good leadership council. Ruth is in charge. Layton is kind of like the vice president. And even his throuple situation is thriving. He, Zara, their baby Liana, and of course, his actual girlfriend, Josie, they all get along great. It's as if they're kind of co-parenting. And as Layton heads off in the morning to sort of run the town and see what's going on, Zara heads off with Dr. Headwood, and she's basically like a nurse to Dr. Headwood, who is the actual doctor in the town. Everybody else kind of has jobs that they had on the train. So for Roach, he's basically the sheriff of the town. He monitors everything and makes sure that everybody's following the rules. Javi is an engineer. Josie helps out Javi with a lot of that. And then you've got guys like Z and Boki. They're helping rebuild the bridge so that when Snowpiercer does return, they can help all their friends. But there are people out there that aren't too happy with the idea of Snowpiercer returning. And one of those people is Osweiler. Now, as I said, Osweiler's had a really, really tough 9 months. He's had a tough time adapting to life in New Eden. In one instance, he gets in a fight with Boki, who screams that Osweiler's always drunk. And Osweiler cuts his hand pretty good, so he has to go to Zara to get it stitched up. And when Zara mentions that their friends are going to be returning from Snowpiercer, Osweiler says, yeah, no, I'm not a real big fan of that idea. And first of all, I don't really have a lot of friends on that train anyway, but they left us. I mean, why should they get to reap the benefits? And Osweiler's certainly not the only one that feels like this. So when things start happening around the town out of the norm, it's understandable to think that maybe it's somebody in the town who isn't keen on the people that stayed on Snowpiercer reaping the benefits of their hard work in New Eden. In one instance, during a council meeting, the power goes out, and when Javi goes to check it, it looks like someone literally just pulled the power cord. And it would be virtually impossible for someone to trip over it. It must have been intentional. And even though this should be a red flag, it's only really a red flag to Layton. He finds it weird. Everybody else just finds it to be an odd coincidence. Layton actually brings us up with a little bit of pillow talk with Josie. Of course, Josie's not interested in that. She's interested in Layton parking his train into her platform. The next day, though, there is an update on Snowpiercer. For the first time in months, Javi feels like he got a transmission from the train. It's pretty garbled, he can't really understand much, but who else would it be? Unable to get a hold of anybody in Snowpiercer, Javi runs to Alex's car to see if she heard the transmission, but she tells Javi, I'm busy right now, I can't really help you out. And he explains that this could be the first chance that they get to talk to Snowpiercer in almost a year, but she doesn't care. She's not interested at all. She's only interested in her research, even though her mother's on that train. With Alex not willing to help out, Javi has to turn to Josie. He needs Josie to go up to the mountains and check the communications transmission because he needs to get in touch with Snowpiercer if they're in comms range, which he thinks that they are. They're coming well ahead of schedule, and they would cross a bridge that isn't ready for them to cross, and they need to know that. So it is of the utmost importance that Javi or somebody from New Eden get in touch with Snowpiercer and let them know, hey, we're not really ready for you to swing by yet. While Josie goes and checks for the one communication relay, someone's going to have to go check for the other one, which is about 6 or 7 hours away, and Leighton says, I'll go get Boki and we'll go check it out. When he goes to grab Boki, he finds out from Z that not only did Boki not show up for work, neither did Oz. Now, Oz missing work is less dramatic. He's been in such a weird mental state that he literally just didn't feel like going. He stopped by the market where he did run into Zara, and Zara let him know, we need to refix your stitches, stop by the infirmary later. But Boki missing work, that is weird. Eventually he's able to find out that Boki went on an errand for Alex. While Leighton tries to figure out what he's going to do about the whole Boki situation and the transmitter, Josie returns with some bad news. The transmitter that she had is busted up. It looks like someone took a rock to it. This is yet another sign that something weird is going on. At this point, Leighton's pretty convinced it's sabotage. Ruth says that they'll discuss stepping up security at the next town hall meeting, and she just instructs Javi to fix the current transmitter and get it back up on the mountain. She does pull Leighton aside because this is a big accusation, the fact that somebody's sabotaging them. They voted on fixing the bridge a long time ago, so he can't quite figure out why anyone would fight about it now, but when you look at the facts, it does look like this is intentional. He doesn't think it's a protest because protesters want to be seen and heard. He thinks that they're being tested, and whoever is doing this wants to see how they respond. It's not like Ruth really has any ideas. She tries to kind of pass the buck to Leighton, but Leighton says, no, Ruth. These people voted you their leader, and they have a great leader, so it's your call. Leighton then heads out to go talk to Alex and see where Boki is. When Leighton goes to Big Alice, where Alex is held up, she doesn't exactly have the welcome mat out. He asks her when Boki's going to be back, and she says later tonight. And by the way, I didn't send him on an errand. He's going to the edge of a pocket to look at barometric pressure and seismograph readings. She then turns her computer around and shows Leighton that they've been having earthquakes. They're small and they're sporadic, but they're real and they're concerning. And what she's trying to figure out is if the atmospheric corrosion is a corollary to the earthquakes. What really bothers her, though, is that there's something that's missing that just doesn't make any sense to her. Leighton kind of just says, yeah, there's a lot of that going around, and he heads out. As he's walking back to New Eden, that's when he gets the shock of his life. Audrey casually rolls up on a track scaler, those little tiny cars that they put Wilfred in. Although Audrey is not doing well at all. And when Leighton opens it up, all she can muster to say is, they're coming. Leighton rushes Audrey's body in and interrupts a town hall meeting with Ruth, and he immediately screams for Dr. Hedwood and Zara, but neither of them are in attendance. Dr. Hedwood had told Zara that she had to step out because Boki needed another treatment, and Zara, having no idea that Boki went on this errand for Alex, just believed it. Zara also stepped out of the infirmary. She let Roach watch Liana, while she headed up to the mountains to go tend to Osweiler's stitches. She did get some insight as to what's going on with Osweiler, and it sounds crazy, but he claims that he can hear voices. At first, there were just these whispers in the wind, but if you really listen, you can hear them. And what he heard was that something happened on the train. All the people on the train are dead, and they're not coming back. Whatever happened was pretty awful. So all this talk about Snowpiercer returning and the grand return, it's not happening. And that's one of the reasons why Osweiler is so frazzled and so bothered. Zara just thinks that Osweiler's going through something, so she doesn't think much of it. She has no idea what's going down in New Eden at the moment. And when Leighton goes to find help for Audrey, that's when all hell breaks loose. He heads out to the infirmary and he runs into Josie, and Josie tries to stop him and he says, no, I know all about Audrey. Yeah, we're trying to get her help. And Josie says, Audrey? No, Leighton, you don't understand. When I went to put that transponder back, I saw something. Josie tells him that she saw a snowmobile, and they don't have one of those, but neither does Snowpiercer. And Leighton's guard was already up because as they were trying to get Audrey help, the power went out, and he figured that whoever is doing this isn't coming, they're already there. So he frantically headed to the infirmary, and he found nobody. Dr. Hedwood isn't there, and neither is Zara. But there's Roach, on the ground, knocked out, unconscious. And baby Liana is gone. That's because Dr. Hedwood had returned to the infirmary, but she returned with somebody. Somebody that didn't belong to New Eden. They knocked out Roach, and they took the baby. And they were about to get away with it. If it wasn't for those meddling kids. No, I'm joking. If it wasn't for Zara returning from stitching up Osweiler. As she was making her way down the mountain, she heard crying and she got concerned. There's only one baby in New Eden, and it's hers. She was shocked to see Dr. Hedwood with this guy that looked like he was a part of a military group. And she demanded to get her baby back, and Dr. Hedwood said, "No, Zara, you don't understand. He's a friend. Just let us go." But Zara, being a mother, said, "No, I'm not going to just let you go with my child." She tried to get to the baby, but this mystery military guy intervened, and he threw her off a cliff. And as Boki was returning, he found her body. Boki runs down to New Eden to get help, and he's able to get Josie. The rest of the members of New Eden, they're arming up. They don't know what's coming. When Josie and Boki arrive at Zara's body, she's still alive, but the only words she can muster to get out are, "They took Liana." And by the time they get Zara's body back to New Eden, unfortunately, she's passed away, and Leighton is beside himself. Even though they're in New Eden, they have the same funeral procession that they did back on the train. But Leighton turns to Josie and says, "Whoever did this, I'm going to find them, and I'm going to kill them." Now the big question is, who did do this? Who's infiltrated Snowpiercer? Who put Audrey on the track scaler? Who took Liana? Well, it all had to do with that rocket that went up in the air and exploded that Snowpiercer saw. They sent both Till and Ben out to investigate it. But when they got to the crash site, they were surrounded. It was an ambush. At gunpoint, they escorted both of them back on Snowpiercer to control the train. The guy in charge introduced himself as Admiral Anton Milius of the International Peacekeeping Forces. He then demanded that they take him to Melanie Cavill. That was 9 months ago. So what exactly happened on Snowpiercer? Well, we find out in episode 2. Once Audrey comes to, she tells Leighton and his group exactly what went down on Snowpiercer 9 months ago when Admiral Anton Milius took over on behalf of the International Peacekeeping Forces. And peacekeeping is certainly one way to put it. He's got an interesting tactic for that. When he commands both Ben and Till to take him to Melanie, neither of them are really keen to do that because they don't know who these guys are. At one point, they both try to fight back, with Till picking up a phone to call Melanie and warn her about Anton and his group, and they shoot her. And with that, peace on Snowpiercer died. Audrey jumped in action to help Till out, but Till said, "No, you have to warn Melanie about what's going on." And she was able to, kind of. Melanie is able to lock the engine door, but when Melanie hears that Ben is on the outside, Anton is threatening violence, he's already shot one passenger, seems like he's itching to do it again, Melanie reluctantly opens up the door. Anton and his group set up shop in the engine room. They put their own software in, they put their own coordinates in, and they kick Melanie and Ben out, even though Melanie and Ben both say, "You need an engineer to actually drive the train." Anton Milius doesn't think they do. He has his men put both of them in the hospitality room where Melanie used to make announcements. And Melanie realizes at this point that the rocket that exploded in the sky was nothing more than an attempt to lure them in, which they fell for. While Melanie and Ben discuss what happened and how to get out of the room that they're currently stuck in because there's a guard outside, there is an announcement made over the loudspeaker that everybody in first and second class has to move to third. And while everybody's being relocated, Till is able to get patched up by the doctor. After Till gets patched up, she's frantically looking for Audrey, and Audrey is doing the same thing. She's trying to get down Carr to get back to Till. She is, however, caught by Anton's men, who kind of corner her in Wilfred's library, and Milius starts questioning her on what she knows about Melanie. And that's because at this point, Melanie and Ben were able to bust out of the room that they were sequestered in. They knocked out, hell, they might have even killed the guard, and they snuck under the train in an attempt to slow it down and ultimately take back the engine. So as Milius is questioning Audrey about Melanie, all of a sudden the train jerks forward, and Audrey has a grin on her face, knowing full well that that was Melanie. But all this did was piss off Milius. He decides to make an example out of everybody. While everybody could travel down train and go where they want, after the train slowed down, Milius decided to get everybody in one singular car in the market, trapping everybody there. He then instructed one of his men to shoot at the ceiling so it would cause a bullet hole, and that little hole would leak in freezing cold air. He then had one of the members from hospitality announce that in 20 minutes, everybody's going to freeze in that car unless Melanie shows up. Melanie decides the best way to save these people isn't to give herself up, it's to take back the engine. She's been able to figure out that there's only one guard guarding the engine. So what she's going to do is she's going to go outside of the train, sneak up, and try to take it back. Ben, of course, thinks that she's nuts for doing this, but Melanie feels like it's the only way. She'll free everybody from the engine once she takes it back. In the meantime, Milius is in the engine, and he's talking to somebody from wherever he came from, giving them an ETA of about 20 minutes. Both Ben and Melanie had realized that whatever track they were on wasn't there the last time they came around the globe. So whoever these people are, they laid new track and laid it quickly. They're no longer on Wilford track, which means they don't know where they're going. So Melanie has no idea where she's going, but she's also on a time crunch because she needs to get to the engine before most of the passengers freeze to death. Unfortunately, before she can reach the engine, it's too late. Snowpiercer has arrived at its destination. It looks to be a mountain tunnel. The train decelerates. A tunnel connects to the train, allowing people from this base to enter Snowpiercer. And Milius gets ready to welcome his colleagues. But just because they've arrived doesn't mean that Melanie has given up hope on taking back Snowpiercer. She grabs a gun, she heads to the engine, she opens the door, and there's only one guard there, and he's got a gun pointed back at her, but Melanie tells him, "You don't have authority to shoot me. If you did, you already would have. So back up, and I'm taking back the train." And the guy's forced to do it. The first thing she does when she gets on the control board is free all the passengers who are on death's door. She then turns to the one guard and at gunpoint says, "Get out of my engine. I will shoot you." That's when Milius returns with one of his colleagues, and it turns out Melanie knows him. It's a guy named Dr. Nema. Milius walks away so Nema and Melanie can get reacquainted, and Melanie is shocked to see him. She can't believe he survived. He explains that the International Peacekeeping Group contacted him when the weather turned for his research. The U.S. Air Force flew him to this bunker along with 80 other scientists to try to reverse what happened to the planet. That's all well and good, but Melanie's pissed off about how Milius conducted himself, trying to take the train over. To which Nema says Admiral Milius does have a temper, and I don't agree with it. But Snowpiercer did need to dock here. He goes on to explain that his research team had developed a compound that triggers CW7 to denature in the upper atmosphere. They've only been able to fire them in single locations, but because of this research, they've been able to create 6 warm spots. And right away, Melanie knows exactly where these warm spots are. The thing is, these warm spots need to grow. They need to feed off one another, kind of create a spider web. That's why they need Snowpiercer. They need Snowpiercer to go around the globe and launch the compound, creating this spider web approach and hopefully getting the planet back to normal. Melanie, however, doesn't think it's a guarantee to work, and Nema excitedly says, "We have one working satellite left. It did work. I'll show you." And he shows Melanie a live footage of New Eden. The fact that they're outside, the fact that they've created a community, the fact that New Eden is working. He then shows Melanie all the data that they have that backs up what he's saying, and he makes a believer out of Melanie Cavill. Later on, she has a one-on-one conversation about Ben with all of this, because if they were to do this, it wouldn't be easy. They'd have to retrofit Snowpiercer to fire off this compound. The passengers on Snowpiercer, their lives would be turned upside down. And both Ben and Melanie agree that if you were to tell them the end game is they can go outside and they don't have to live on a train anymore, a lot of them would be all for that. Now, the other thing is, Melanie wouldn't be coming with them. She would be staying back at this bunker, going through research and getting ready for Snowpiercer to come back and refuel it. Ben would basically be in charge. It's a risk, but it's one that Melanie is willing to take. So 9 months ago, she handed over the keys to Snowpiercer, and Snowpiercer took off. Fast forward a few days ago, and Snowpiercer is way, way different. Miles, though, overheard a conversation with Milius where they were going to ambush New Eden. When he told Ben and Till and Audrey, they knew they had to warn their friends, because that was never part of the plan. So what Ben and his group decided to do was put Till in a track scaler and have her go to New Eden, warning Leighton and the entire group so they can prepare for Milius and his men. That was the plan. It was forced to change, though, when Audrey, after saying goodbye to Till, was leaving the car and she was caught by one of Milius' soldiers, and he started attacking Audrey. Till jumped out of the track scaler to defend her girlfriend. All the while, Ben is sitting in the controls waiting for the okay to get the track scaler onto the actual track. Time is running out. And eventually it got to the point where Audrey had to get in the track scaler, radio Ben, and say, "It's me. You got to send me, and you got to do it now." So that's how Audrey got in the track scaler, and that's how she got to New Eden. After Audrey tells Layton and the rest of the leaders of New Eden all of this, the one thing they can't figure out is what exactly Milius and his men want with Liana. And Layton, being her father, doesn't even want to think about where his daughter is. So he leaves, he takes off, and when Josie asks, "Where are you going?" he just says, "To find them." In episode 3, the father in Layton wants to get Liana back, but also the cop in Layton has the ability to do that. He's got the skills, and he knows that. Layton, though, knows that there's only one way to actually get Liana back, and that's to get Big Alice, the engine, the thing that really controls New Eden, helps power the community, helps keep it alive. And the thing about this is, Layton isn't asking permission. He's demanding that he take Big Alice, because in his mind, it's not a question of whether or not this is the right move. He's not waiting for a democratic process or a vote. No. He's taking Big Alice, and he's not taking no for an answer. He storms into Alex's office, and he asks her, how long is it going to take to unhook this thing? Alex tries to explain to him that it's not that simple just to get Big Alice back to a working train. And as she's explaining this to him, Ruth comes in and says, Layton, we need to talk. It's not going to go down like this. She realizes that Layton is in a very emotional state at this moment, and because of that, she doesn't think Layton is thinking clearly about what taking Big Alice means for New Eden and means for the residents of New Eden. It could mean death. While she feels for Layton in this moment, she does not think the juice is worth the squeeze. She demands that they convene the council to talk about this. The only problem is one of the council members, Roach, is on patrol. So as they wait for him to come back, the group kind of just argues about whether or not this is the right move. As they're discussing this, Sykes walks in because rumors are swirling in New Eden that Layton is going to be taking Big Alice and it would affect everybody. This does start a conversation between Javi and Alex on whether or not taking Big Alice would be the death nail for New Eden. Javi saying, no, I don't think it would be. I think we can jerry-rig a situation where New Eden would still survive for at least a couple weeks while Layton goes after Liana. That's when Layton cuts in and says, I understand that this is a tricky situation. I don't want to ruin New Eden, but I need to get my daughter back, so we need to figure out what we're going to do. And Ruth tells him, look, the days of hijacking trains are over. But that's not good enough for Layton. He's not about to sit back and wait for the kidnappers to bring back Liana. He's going to be proactive, and he storms out. He heads to go try to figure out if he can rig up the track scaler to go after Liana, and as he's doing so, Josie comes and tries to talk some sense into him, but Layton's completely beyond hearing reason at this point. He's just got one goal in mind, and that's to get his daughter back. He gets so nasty that Josie has to tell him, I don't know who you are right now. Layton, though, can't figure out a way to get the track scaler to work, so he heads back into town, and that's when he runs into the town drunk, Osweiler. He starts talking to Layton about how that morning he saw a dove, and he thought it was a sign from Zara about hope, but Layton just gets pissed off at him and throws him aside, not wanting to hear any of his nonsense. In fact, he blames Zara's death on Os, because he feels like if Os would have just come down in the town, it would have meant that Zara didn't have to go up in the mountains to heal him up, and thus led to her death. The bird, though, that Osweiler saw in the sky wasn't just any bird. It was Mr. Sprinkles, Alex's coworker. And when Alex tracks him down, she finds that Mr. Sprinkles, R.I.P. folks, pour one out for him, has died. After collecting the Mr. Sprinkles sample, she starts to head back into the town, and she runs into Josie, who is sitting at the site of where Zara died, and she's just beating herself up over it. But it's really everything. It's the fact that Zara died. It's the fact that Liana was taken. Josie's feeling some guilt about all of that. And as Alex is trying to comfort Josie about this, she starts to suffer another nosebleed. With Alex, though, in the mountains, that leaves Big Alice unattended, and Layton plans on taking advantage of that. He grabs Javi. At first, Javi does want to help Layton out, but Layton gets more and more and more aggressive until finally Javi says, look, I'm trying to help you out because you're my friend. But Layton's pushy, he's persistent, he's blaming Javi for not working fast enough, and it's just not that simple. Javi can't get Big Alice working as a train and power up New Eden fast enough for Leighton's liking, because Leighton at the moment is just seeing red. After a little bit, Javi is able to figure out how to switch the power to a very limited source, thus allowing them to take Big Alice. And when they flip the switch, it works. As Leighton puts his plan into full effect, one person that's been really battling over this issue is Ruth. She is in charge of the town, and she has a conversation with Josie about the struggles of letting Leighton take the train, whether or not it's the right move. Like many people, Josie sees both sides of this situation. But as the two are having this conversation, Sykes comes in and tells both Ruth and Josie what Leighton's plan has been. She caught them in the act. Ruth is able to catch up to Leighton just before he enters Big Alice. But she's backed by both Josie and Sykes. Leighton tells them, "You're not keeping me off that train. Javi was able to get power to the town. I'm going to go after my daughter." Fortunately for Leighton, he's really no match for Sykes. I mean, she beats the crap out of him. And it's not like Josie or Ruth enjoy watching this go down. They have no choice but to lock up Leighton. Ruth goes and discusses it with Roach, and Roach has Leighton's back because he tells Ruth, "You decided this all on your own, that this is what's best for the town, but you didn't actually take it to a vote. I mean, I'm a father. I know what I would do if I was in his situation." So he encourages Ruth to open it up to the town. Let everybody decide. Let a democratic society actually be democratic. And while Leighton, of course, would rather just be allowed to take the train, he's going to have to deal with the people of New Eden buying what he's selling. While Leighton figures out exactly what he's going to say to the people of New Eden, Javi, who wasn't arrested, by the way, he goes and chats with Alex and notices that she's cutting open Mr. Sprinkles. He's very surprised about that, but Mr. Sprinkles was dead after all. She explains that she anticipated Mr. Sprinkles' death because she was sending him to the edge of the pocket to gather data. She figured that one day he would fly out too far and freeze to death, but that's not what happened. No, it was exsanguination, and I'll let all of you take a second to bing.com that word. 1 second. Okay, we're done. As you now know after rocking a Bing search, exsanguination is the severe loss of blood. And what it tells Alex is that her nosebleeds aren't a fluke because she gets them every time she's near the edge of the pocket. As for the rest of it, Alex knows she just has to follow the data. Alex, like the rest of New Eden, will now have to go to town hall and listen to both sides of the case, whether or not Leighton should be allowed to take Big Alice. Before Leighton does make that case, he needs to make up with Josie. Josie feels like Leighton has been completely tone deaf throughout this situation, and she explains to Leighton that she's been with that little girl, Liana, since she was born. She was with Zara when Zara died, so when Josie pushes back on the idea that Leighton should take Big Alice, she's not doing it out of spite, because Josie lost people too. It's a lot for Leighton to think about as he heads into the town hall. Ruth makes her pitch, and Leighton makes an impassioned plea that's pretty somber, actually. But at the end of it, Leighton is allowed to take Big Alice. He's going to have 3 weeks. That's it. He has to return by 3 weeks. That's as much power as the town has. And that's with all things going well. Ideally, he would return before that. He, however, will not be going alone. There's people from the tail, like Z, who are coming along with him. They know that they can't let him go alone and, tails stick together. And while initially it was thought that Javi would go along with Leighton, no, it's going to be Alex. After looking at the data that she talked about, she looked at New Eden and thought, what if it's not a warm spot but a bubble? And bubbles burst. The only way to get these answers is to leave New Eden. Josie will also be going along with Leighton, but maybe the most surprising person to go along with Leighton is Ruth. Even though she was completely against this idea, as she tells Leighton, "It's my job to make sure this thing gets back in time." While they're gone, Roach is going to hold down the fort. And as for what's going on in Snowpiercer, well, after the little stunt, both Ben and Till were thrown into the brig, but they were both taken out because Admiral Milius has a job for them. He brings Ben in front of a body that looks completely charred up, and he explains that he had the wrong guy working on an engineering problem. It has to do with the last car of the train, the AgSac car, agriculture. They need to rewire some things. There's a chemical compound. Dr. Nima starts to explain it. And Ben does it because he's able to negotiate a little less work time for his colleagues. He's also able to negotiate that Till come with him. But when they really start to dive into the issue, they feel like there's something that both Milius and Nema aren't telling them. I mean, for one, Ben looked at the body, and whatever killed this guy wasn't electrical. It was chemical burns. Ben thought if he got Nema one-on-one, he could get the truth out of him. When Ben is finally able to do that, he approaches Nema pretty cautiously because Nema does have guards around him. And he tells Nema, dude, the Admiral does not respect you. Everybody can see it, so do you want to level with me and tell me what's going on? Nema gets real close to Ben and starts to say, the Admiral, he wasn't always the Admiral. But then a soldier walks by them and Nema changes his story and his tone, and he starts saying how the Admiral earned his stripes by keeping everybody alive. Follow his orders and you'll stay alive. Right before Ben leaves, he says, why should I trust anything that comes out of your mouth? And Nema tells him, because Melanie does. Nema, though, does stay quiet when later on Milius asks him, what did Ben want? He doesn't rat him out at all. He says that Ben was just asking about the electrical situation. And when Milius asks him if they were up to something, would you tell me? He reluctantly says, yes, I would tell you. But the fact is, they are up to something. They're trying to figure out exactly what they're doing in the last car, trying to rewire some electrical problem that doesn't really exist. They're able to figure out that, yes, there is something sinister going on here. There's chemicals, and they're not safe because there's chemical mass around. Ben starts to hypothesize that maybe it's not about killing people, though. Maybe it's about experimenting on people, like Admiral Milius's hit team. Those guys have definitely had work done, and not like Botox in the lips. What Till and Ben decide to do is try to use these chemicals against them. They both stall so long that it forces Milius and Nema and a couple other people down to check on the progress. Nema, however, catches on to what they're about to do, and he warns the Admiral, who is able to get out of the car, but Nema isn't. Till is able to trap him, triggering the gas, and she tells him, this is for Audrey. And as he's being choked out, Nema says, she made it to New Eden. Neither Till or Nema die from this. Till and Ben are both thrown in a prison. Till's knocked out. And when she finally comes to, Ben asks, what were you thinking? And Till says, it worked. I found out information. I found out that Audrey made it, and she's safe. And Ben realizes that is why the group has been pushed so hard. Audrey making it to New Eden pushed Milius's timeline up. But they also realized the trap that they were setting up in the last car wasn't for Snowpiercer. It was for Big Alice. In episode 4, for Layton and company, they know that this is going to be unlike anything they have ever done before. Yes, they have allies on the train, and they do have people in Big Alice, but a revolution is something that they're not seeking because they don't have time to organize one. This is going to be an extraction mission. It doesn't take too long for them to spot Snowpiercer, and when they do, Layton and his team get ready to execute Operation Liana. It's going to involve Z and the Tailies fortifying Big Alice, but it's also going to involve Josie leaving Big Alice to connect Snowpiercer and Big Alice together. At the very last second, with everybody in position, they get a radio call from Admiral Milius, and it stops them dead in their tracks, figuratively. I mean, the train's still moving. Layton hops on the comms, and he asks Milius, so you're the guy who stole my daughter and killed her mother? And Milius claims that Layton has bad information, but Layton's pretty sure he's got the right information. Milius wants to clear the air on this whole matter, so he invites Layton to Snowpiercer, which comes as a big surprise. They weren't expecting Milius to be so accommodating, and they're cautious about this. Because of that, Layton isn't about to make a decision, or at least he's not about to let Milius know that he's making a decision. He tells Milius, you'll wait for a decision. Once Layton hangs up with Milius, he's got to figure out plan B. Layton discusses it with Josie, and they both agree that they've come too far and they have to get on Snowpiercer, but they're not about to do it on the Admiral's terms. The plan they come up with is a very, very risky one. They tell Milius that Layton is going to take him up on his offer just to get Big Alice close enough to Snowpiercer, but never connect. When Big Alice is close enough to Snowpiercer, Layton and Josie are going to hop on. They're going to do so Boki style, on top of the train. They're going to sneak into Snowpiercer. They're going to grab Liana. And then they're going to signal to Alex and Ruth that they have Liana. whereupon Alex will connect Big Alice to Snowpiercer just long enough for Layton, Josie, and Liana to make it back, and then they disappear. Now, one of the reasons why this is so risky is because Ruth isn't going to have constant communication with Layton, but Layton assures her that they're not going to hand over Big Alice, and he trusts that Alex and Ruth will make the right decision in his absence. Over on Snowpiercer, Dr. Nema informs Milius that he cannot use the Gemini variant in the last car because it's too toxic, and that's Milius' plan all along, to trap Layton, use that toxic variant, take over Big Alice. Doesn't seem like Milius is really listening to Nema, so he reminds him that if they do hurt any of Melanie's people, it violates their agreement and they need Melanie's research. But again, Milius just completely brushes Nema aside, saying, leave the strategy to me. Normally, Nema would probably just take this lying down, but he doesn't. He tells Milius, I don't really understand your strategy. I mean, you gave away your hand. You should have just let Layton walk into this trap. And the thing is, Nema does this in front of a bunch of Milius' men. So Milius explains his reasoning, which isn't all that good, but then he has to get some revenge on Nema, so he forces him to drop down and give him 20. And Nema's more of like a mind, not really a body. He gets to 3 push-ups, and, well, he can't get any more than that. It's pretty pathetic. Nema's conscience, though, cannot allow him to let Milius use the Gemini variant. He knows he needs help. And he goes to the boxes where they're holding Ben and Till, and he tries to get their help. He gets Ben to explain to him how to cut the trap so that if Layton does walk through, he doesn't get hit with the Gemini variant. But when he goes to do it, he's caught by one of Milius' men. Meanwhile, as Layton and Josie try to make their way onto Snowpiercer, Milius is wondering why exactly Big Alice hasn't docked yet, which causes Ruth to come up with an excuse. She is in complete stall mode at this point, and Milius is getting more and more antsy. So much so that he tells Miles, who's driving the train at this point, hey, press the brakes, causing Big Alice to literally run into Snowpiercer. This couldn't have come at a worse time because Josie and Layton are literally on top of Snowpiercer trying to make their way in, but luckily neither of them fall off. And a few minutes later, they are able to sneak into the train. Dr. Pelton is the first friendly to notice them. And as they're trying to travel conspicuously through Snowpiercer, she's alerting them to all the changes that Milius and his crew have made to the train, which is a lot. They tell Dr. Pelton exactly why they've come back, and Pelton says, well, if Liana is here, she'd be in the youth car. They separated all the parents from the children. It's a deterrent from keeping people from revolting. The big issue is the youth car is up in first class, which is near impossible to get to because of Milius' checkpoints. Pelton, though, thinks she does have a way on helping Layton and Josie get to Liana, so they head to the assembly line to see if they can drum up some help. When they do arrive at the assembly line, Layton is really surprised at all the work that's being done. He doesn't believe that it's just for a retrofit, and Dr. Pelton says, unfortunately, I don't have any more information to give you because what they're doing here is on a need-to-know basis, and they don't think I need to know. As Pelton is explaining to them all of the checkpoints and how difficult this will be, Layton and Josie get spotted by a couple of other friendlies, and they're not as quiet as Dr. Pelton. Fed up with Milius and all the crap that they've been dealing with, they tell Layton we can fight, but it's drumming up a bit of a noticeable crowd. And to quell that, Josie and Layton explain why they're there, and they promise that they will be back to help everybody else once they get Liana. The crowd, though, has gotten so big that it tips off Milius' men, and a fight breaks out on the assembly line. It splits up Josie and Layton. Layton gets helped out by Tristan, the hospitality guy that stayed on Snowpiercer, while Josie sticks with Dr. Pelton. At this point, Milius has been tipped off to the fact that Layton is on Snowpiercer. So he radios to Big Alice and says, I know Layton's on Snowpiercer, so do me a favor, keep up. And he tells the engineer to floor it. And the engineer at this point is Ben, who isn't giving Milius any information that he doesn't have to give him. And Layton is definitely on the train, and Tristan's suggestion is to go underneath the train in the tunnels. He tells Layton that's the only way you'll be able to get past the checkpoints. So Layton starts to do that. That's when he runs into Dr. Nema. Nema was caught by Milius' guy, but Milius had been experimenting on his men. It had caused respiratory issues, and Nema told the guy, hey, I can help you out with this. He gave him a substance, but the substance killed him. And Nemo was once again caught by one of Milius's men, although this time he was saved by Layton. Right away, Nemo knows exactly who Layton is, and in order to stay alive, he says to Layton, "I can take you to Liana." He explains to Layton all about the trap and how he tried to disable it. He then goes on to explain why they're retrofitting Snowpiercer and fills Layton in on traveling the globe, firing off rockets, that sort of thing. But the whole time, Layton's getting played. Because Nemo was leading Layton to an area where there was surveillance, and that's when Nemo clued in Milius on the whereabouts of Layton. He wasn't that good at it, though. I mean, Layton figured out pretty quickly that he had just been backstabbed. So he grabs the radio, he tells Milius, "I'll see you soon," and then he's able to fight off Milius's guy and escape. While that was going on, Josie was also trying to make her way to first class, although she was doing it inside the train with Dr. Pelton. While doing this, she ended up running into Till, who was stuck in the box, and she frees her. She tells her why she's there, and she gives her the latest on Audrey. As those two continue to make their way up the train, Josie just starts opening doors, trying to see if maybe Liana's in one of them, and she runs into Miles, and she's so relieved, because for the last year, she's been worried sick about Miles. She gives Miles a big hug. Miles explains that they're not letting him leave, but Josie tells him, "I'm going to get you out of here." Once those two leave that room, however, they're seen by a couple of Milius's men, to which Josie turns to Till and says, "Get Miles to safety," and she tries to fight them off. She isn't successful. In handcuffs, she's brought in front of Milius, and he tells her that he'd like to talk to Layton, but he's a little uncooperative at the moment, so he's forced to talk to her. He tells Josie that he doesn't have Layton's daughter, but he can take them to her. In order to do that, they're going to do a trade. Liana for Big Alice. And now Josie has something to think about. Now back in New Eden, they're having a tough go of it without Big Alice. Best case scenario, they'd be able to go 3 weeks without Big Alice, but they were hit by a bad storm, and Javi's completely stressed out. Javi, though, isn't the only one stressed out. Everybody in New Eden is stressed out. They hold a town hall meeting, and it is not pretty. The people are restless. It certainly doesn't get better when Javi explains that their power grid is on the verge of collapse, and they need to start rationing power to survive the 14 days until Layton gets back. Roach decides to take command of the room and tell everybody to chill out. It'll be all right. You're just going to have to deal with it for the time being. This isn't a doomsday scenario. It's so convincing that you'd think even Roach believes it, but he's stressed out like everybody else. He just put on a good face. He's still beating himself up a lot over losing Liana. He feels like it was his duty because he was watching her. And as Carly is telling him, "Dad, that's not your fault," Osweiler comes up because he's found something. In order to snap Osweiler out of this funk he's been in, Roach had commissioned him to join the Town Watch, aka the New Eden Police Force. So far, the returns have been good. Osweiler seems less weird. And while on a patrol, he found a severed human hand. Roach and Osweiler decided to go check out the area where Osweiler found the hand, and Roach tells Javi, "Figure out how long this thing's been frozen," but it causes a little bit of a fight between the two. Roach feeling like this hand takes precedent over the power grid, and Javi explaining, no, the power grid takes precedent over the hand. While they don't agree on which one is more important, what they do agree on is keeping the hand quiet because people are already stressed out enough. But Javi does agree he'll look into figuring out where this hand came from or how long it's been frozen, that sort of thing. And while he wasn't necessarily looking for help on this, he gets it from Sykes. Sykes, who runs New Eden's food supply, has been pissed off because she feels like she's been left out of everything, and she feels like she should be on the town council. She implores Javi to let her help out a little bit more, so that's when Javi shows her the hand. And she does give some insight about it. She's able to figure out that it's been cut off and frozen for about 6 hours. It's fairly new. But as they inspect it, Javi notices something in between the index and the thumb. He recognizes it because he has one. When he cuts the hand open, he finds a microchip. It was used to open doors on Snowpiercer, but what it means is that this hand doesn't belong to an outsider. It belongs to one of them. And as they're figuring that out, Roach and Osweiler headed up to the location where Osweiler did find the hand, but they get caught up in a snowstorm. And as Osweiler is hearing those voices that he's heard for a while now, he turns around to find that he's all alone. Roach has seemingly disappeared. In episode 5, when Milius gives Josie the option, Big Alice for Liana, Josie runs at him. She's disgusted by the fact that anyone would steal a child in order to get Big Alice. Milius's men apprehend Josie, and Ben begs Milius, "Give me 1 minute alone with her. I'll try to convince her to take this deal to Layton." But he actually doesn't. He tells Josie, "You can't take this deal to Layton. It's not worth it. With you and Layton being here, we have a shot of winning this train back. These people are sick of this crap." As he's telling Josie how they need to fight back, Milius walks in, he overhears the conversation, and he figures out real easily that Ben was not trying to convince Josie to take the deal to Layton at all. Milius's men then escort Josie into the section of the train where they think Layton is, and Layton is in fact in the old tale. He's with Till and Miles. They go back and forth on whether or not this deal is worth it, and Layton brings up a good point. They don't even know if Liana's alive, so he's going to need proof of that before he even considers giving over Big Alice. A little while after receiving this demand, Milius hands Layton a phone, and he says, "Go ahead, listen for yourself." And on the other end is Dr. Headwood, who has Liana, and Layton can hear the voice of his baby girl, so he knows that she's alive. And at that point, it's a matter of getting her back by any means necessary, and that involves giving over Big Alice. Layton heads to the front of the train where Ben is in order to get in contact with Ruth over in Big Alice, and he tells her, "You've got to connect the trains. Ruth, they have Liana. She's not here, but they're going to take me to her. I know this sounds crazy, but we'll figure out the rest later. Right now, we just have to get Liana back." And even though this goes against everything that Ruth stands for, she never believed that going after Liana was worth giving up Big Alice, she decides to have faith in Layton and follow his lead, connecting the trains and thinking that eventually they will get Big Alice back to New Eden. They do so just in time before they head back to the bunker to resupply. When they get into the missile silo, they all have to decontaminate, and then they're all brought into one room. Everybody except for Josie. She's getting tended to by Dr. Headwood in medical because Josie has dealt with some big-time injuries that she hasn't been able to even feel because of her cold treatment. Josie missing, however, is a concern for Layton. It's also a concern for everybody else in the room. Alex, Ruth, Ben, Till. There's nothing about that they can do at the moment, though. Layton needs to get Liana and get her back on the train and get Big Alice back to New Eden. Ben knows that they have 3 hours to do this as the train resupplies. The problem is the layout of the silo is meant to keep you guessing. It's not going to be easy to get Liana back. In the middle of their game plan, Milius and his men come in, and the first thing Milius does is thank them for their sacrifice. He realizes that none of this has been easy, but he does tell them it is for the greater good. They're saving the planet. He then goes into the mission of warming the world, which is a concern to Ruth because without Big Alice, New Eden dies. And Milius explains that's the whole reason we need Big Alice, is to keep New Eden running. New Eden relying on Eternal Engine, that's hospice. It's not going to work. What we're going to do is cure the world. Alex then asks Milius, "Where's Melanie? Why isn't she telling us any of this?" And Milius tells the group that Melanie is off base collecting climate data. She'll be back soon. He then turns the mood in the room by saying, "This is the part you're not going to like." The door opens up, and in walks Wilfred. Right away, Layton tries to attack him. He's apprehended by Milius's men and taken away. But Wilfred's loving this. He loves the shocked look on their faces after they left him for dead. He goes on to explain that Milius found him on the track and saved him. But he also says that Melanie is on board with all of this. And he does admit that the idea of stealing Liana for the engine was his idea. Milius, though, puts an end to this reunion. He tells Wilfred to get out, and then he tells the rest of the group that's there, once the train leaves, they'll get acquainted with their new accommodations, which is going to be in the silo. The next time they leave the silo, the entire world is going to be New Eden. Milius walks out of the room, and as soon as he does, Wilfred's waiting for him. And while it looked like in that room there was a team effort going on and Wilfred had some power, in reality, he doesn't. Milius is really calling the shots. One of the things, though, that Milius is willing to let Wilfred do is get back on the train and get to his car, where he can grab some items, dress well, that sort of thing. The rest of the group, Ben, Till, Ruth, Alex, they're just locked in the room to digest what just happened. One of the discussions they have is whether or not Melanie is still even alive or involved. None of them have heard from her. But Ben assures them, I've gotten her blueprints. I know Mel's work. Yes, she is still alive. I'm sure she wasn't happy about the Wilfred situation, but she might actually be on board with this. And we have to accept that. For the moment, though, their goal is to get out of this room, get back on the train, and get Big Alice back to New Eden. The one person that's not really on board with this, though, is Alex. After all, she's been doing work at New Eden, she's been looking at the climate data, she's been having bloody noses, and she realizes that if Melanie is on board with this, maybe there is merit to the work they're doing here, and she wants to know more about it. She decides to do something that the entire group warns her against. She wants to go talk to Wilfred. She feels like she can get through to him and get the truth out of him. When Alex meets Wilfred in Big Alice, she interrupts a conversation between Nima and Wilfred. Nima's a little concerned that Big Alice's retrofit won't really work with firing off rockets. Wilfred just thinks that he's a worrywart. Once she walks in the door, Wilfred asks Nima to leave so they can have a private one-on-one conversation. She asks Wilfred, all right, what's the deal? What are you doing? What's the end game for this? And he claims that he's just helping them save the world. That's it. She doesn't really believe him, but then he starts to compliment her work on how she maneuvered Big Alice into becoming an energy source. And he's willing to show her the work that they're doing in the lab, mainly the work that Melanie's done. Alex, being so curious, decides to take Wilfred up on the offer. Alex takes him up on the offer, and they start sneaking through the silo to get to Melanie's lab. And as they're doing it, Alex starts questioning Wilfred on why he decided to get all of her friends in one room trapped, why he decided to kidnap baby Liana. All the while, Wilfred is just deflecting. Her friends, though, are running out of time. There's about an hour left before the train leaves, and once it leaves, they're done. And they know that once the train leaves, New Eden is done. They have to do something, and Ben decides to act. Being an engineer, he knows how to hotwire some items, and he's able to free them from that room. They start trying to make their way through the silo to get back to the train. They realize, though, they need to split up. Layton tells Till and Ben to go to Big Alice, while she finds Layton and the others, meaning Josie and Alex. The goal is to save as many people off of Snowpiercer as they can, and Ruth makes it clear, do not wait for me. As the group does split up, Alex and Wilfred had made their way to quote-unquote Melanie's lab, and Wilfred is sinking his claws into Alex. He's complimenting her on the job she's done, he's setting traps that she's falling into, until eventually Wilfred opens the door to see Ben and Till. And he jokingly makes a comment about how they're making a break for it and how he didn't think Ben had it in him, and that's when Ben punches him. In response to this, Wilfred hits an alarm alerting everybody to the escape, and Ben and Till know they need to get out of there. But Alex is not coming with them. She tells them I'm staying, but she does give them instructions on how to get back to Snowpiercer ASAP. Ben and Till are able to make their way up to Snowpiercer where they see Tristan, and they let him know that they're going to take back Big Alice, but that Ruth is still back in the silo, and Tristan's going to hold off as long as he can. Ruth, meanwhile, has been able to locate Layton. The problem is he's being transported to another room. He had a meeting earlier with Milius. Milius promised that if they get Big Alice, he will give him Liana. And Ruth had planned on trying to save Layton, but unfortunately, she was a little too late. When she finally makes eye contact with him, the elevator doors are closing and he's going somewhere that she's not. And Layton's being transported to another place, but at the moment, Milius and his staff are just worried about losing Snowpiercer. They know that Till, Ben, Ruth, well, they're having a little bit of a revolt. So they're trying to load up the train and get out of there as fast as possible. They don't even realize that Ben and Till are actually on the train and trying to get people to Big Alice to save them. While the tailies hold off Milius and his men, Snowpiercer does end up leaving. The good news is Ruth was able to make it on the train at the last second. Tristan was able to hold up his end of that deal. Shortly after the two trains leave, Ben goes to disconnect Big Alice, but it doesn't work. One of the coupling mechanisms is faulty. This isn't good. It basically means that their plan is cooked and everyone in New Eden is going to die. And that's when Ben realizes that there is one way to fix the coupling mechanism. He's going to have to sacrifice himself. Now, he doesn't tell Till this at all. He makes it sound like he'll be able to go and do this manual override and come back, but actually, Ben knows that he won't be coming back. Ben knows that this is going to cost him his life, but it's important. Ben goes out in the freezing cold and he physically disconnects Big Alice from Snowpiercer. This allows Ruth, Till, and a bunch of others to be able to get back to New Eden. Unfortunately, it does end up costing Ben his life. Back at the silo, though, there were 3 members that came from Big Alice and didn't end up making it back on the train. That'd be Josie, Layton, and Alex. Alex is actually approached by Nema, who's surprised to see her, and he asks her, "Do you ever get nosebleeds?" Which, of course, she does. Josie, meanwhile, wakes up from having undergone surgery. She has no idea what it's for, but she feels out of it, and she's being pumped full of something called C10 and C12. And then there's Layton. Milius wasn't a big fan of the fact that Layton didn't hold up his end of the bargain. They didn't get Big Alice, but he does want to show Layton that Liana is okay. So he brings him into a room where there's a giant window. He knocks on it, the curtain opens up, and he sees Liana, but Liana is being held by Wilfred. In episode 6, we'll start off on Big Alice, where they're heading back to New Eden, but they're dealing with the fact that they just lost Ben. It's emotional for everybody. Also, they're bringing a lot of people back with them, and they have to address everybody. So Till introduces everybody to the leader of New Eden, Ruth. Now everybody knows Ruth, but not everybody was aware that she is the leader of New Eden. And as Ruth starts to address the crowd, she gets a little bit of stage fright, and she just has to leave. Till goes and has a talk with her. She feels better about the situation. She's just a little bit overwhelmed. And when she comes out, they all carve a B into the engine room to signify Ben and his importance to everybody in the sacrifice that he made. But with New Eden, they're dealing with the loss of Roach. Now, they don't know what happened to Roach, but they are concerned. He just went missing. One particular morning, Osweiler goes out in another search to find Roach, and he doesn't find Roach, but he does find the owner of that missing hand. It's Wickens, his old buddy from the train. He escorts Wickens back to New Eden, and they start questioning him on what exactly he was doing out there, but also how he lost his hand. Javi and Osweiler are willing to let him talk. Sykes, however, no, she's not about that life. She wants answers immediately on what happened to Roach. Wickens claims that he was a prisoner. He was forced to help these people, and they cut his hand off in retribution. But no one believes that. And for Osweiler, he doesn't care about what Wickens was really doing. He just wants to know where Roach is. And Wickens says, "Bro, I don't know." That's when Sykes just starts to torture him with his injured hand. Luckily for Wickens, a nurse walks in, and they're able to get it patched up, but he's in pretty rough shape. As Wickens heals up, Javi, Sykes, and Osweiler discuss the situation, none of which makes any sense to them. I mean, Roach goes missing right next to where Wickens was. It just doesn't add up. They know he's hiding something, but they're having trouble getting it out of him, especially with Sykes going all psycho on him. So Osweiler decides to use another method. He takes Wickens to his own camp later that night. He explains why he decided to camp away from everybody else. He asks Wickens, "Well, what if I give you your night car service in exchange for helping me get on the train?" And that night car service is tickling. I don't kink shame on this channel. We've all got our thing. And for Wickens, it's getting tickled. Poor Wickens hasn't gotten tickled in a long time, so he takes Osweiler up on that offer, and Osweiler starts to tickle, but he uses this as a way to get the information out of Wickens. When Wickens gives the safe word, Osweiler doesn't stop. He starts questioning him on what exactly he was doing up there helping these people. And Wickens admits that he had pointed out Zara to them. He also pointed out Dr. Headwood, but he did so not knowing their intentions. When he found out what they were doing, he jumped from the snowmobile, his hand got caught, it was ripped off, and he passed out. He woke up and saw them digging his grave. They were digging a bunch of them along the ledge around where Osweiler found him. But when Osweiler goes to investigate these quote-unquote graves, he doesn't find graves. He finds bombs. Because Wickens thought that they were, in fact, digging graves, but no. Their plan was to legitimately bury New Eden. And those bombs are all set up. And then finally, over in the bunker, Alex is working with Dr. Nema. Dr. Nema is very interested in the nosebleeds, but before Alex gives him that information, she wants to know who made it onto Big Alice and who did not. Nema, however, just plays dumb because he just wants to get his research and save the planet. Nema, however, knows more than he's letting on, and Alex has a feeling about that. Then there's Alex's old mentor, Joseph Wilfred. While it may have looked like Wilfred was working hand in hand with Milius, it's not really the case. Milius did, in fact, find Wilfred in that track scaler, and when he found out that Wilfred was the one who created Snowpiercer, Big Alice, he thought he could use him. Wilfred has kind of been his prisoner, but he's been playing the game. He has been helping Milius because he knows that Milius is his best chance to get back his trains. That, however, doesn't mean that he trusts Milius. And Milius has been working Wilfred really, really hard. Milius put Wilfred in charge of unblocking the tunnel that was set up when Big Alice escaped. But as Wilfred works on it, all of a sudden he has like a medical condition. He starts to get lightheaded. He cuts himself by accident. He doesn't even realize it. Wilfred has to go for a treatment with Dr. Headwood, and it's a treatment that he's received before. There's something medically wrong with Wilfred. But it's during this treatment where him and Dr. Headwood discuss Milius and the fact that it's pretty obvious to them Milius is a little insecure about his power. That is on full display after this treatment goes through, and Wilfred is holding court with a bunch of Milius's men telling old stories about being on Big Alice and rallying the troops. It's talking about this type of leadership that really gets under Milius's skin, because it seems like, at least to Milius's men, that Wilfred was a great leader who knew how to lead by example, whereas Milius leads by intimidation and fear. And he shows off that fear. He takes Joseph Wilfred aside and he says, I've been working you really, really hard, but I think you deserve something in return. Why don't you go on a little sample run with the boys? See how it goes. Enjoy yourself. Blow off some steam. And this isn't a suggestion, it's an order. And Wilfred, knowing full well what this is, just once again plays the game, says, "Oh, that sounds great." As Wilfred is leaving for this sample run, he does run into Alex, and Alex can tell that there's something going on. She asks Wilfred, "Are you all right?" And he just says, "Let's just stay on the right side of the tracks, Alex." It's cryptic, but it's a warning. Now, what is a sample run? Well, a sample run is when Milius's men travel way, way down in the bottom of the bunker. They drop a bunch of MRE packets for the prisoners at the bottom of this silo. That's right, there are prisoners living at the bottom of this silo that have been experimented on. And it's at the bottom of the silo where Layton wakes up. He has no idea where he is, and as he looks around, he finds out that he is not alone. Their leader, a woman named Kari, asks Layton who he is, where he came from, and Layton spills the details on Snowpiercer because these people have no idea what Snowpiercer is. But as Layton is trying to explain to these people that he isn't a threat, they hear the elevator coming, and they know what that means. They know what a sample run is. The soldiers, along with Wilfred, drop all of the MRE packets into a room. They dim the lights, and then all of these prisoners go and they try to grab the MRE packets before they themselves are grabbed. It's like a cat and mouse game. But this does benefit Nema's research. Earlier in the day, Nema gave Milius a list of the prisoners that he needs samples of. Every time the soldiers grab somebody, they check their identification, and if it's on Nema's list, they grab a blood sample. It's barbaric, but in a way it's a win-win because all the prisoners get food. At the end of it, though, Wilfred thinks that he's heading back upstairs with all of Milius's guys, but he's not. He's forced at gunpoint to stay down there. And that is when Layton finally gets his hands on Wilfred. He starts pummeling him, beating him for everything he's done. But Wilfred, being an engineer, was prepared. He had a knife, and he stabbed Layton. And Layton was forced to stumble back and try to find something that he could stitch himself up with. Meanwhile, Wilfred just locked himself in a room. Layton found help in Kari, who was able to stitch him back up, while also explaining her backstory. She tells Layton that it was an international peacekeeping lab. They were trying to find ways to reverse the effects of CW7, but there was a chemical leak. Milius sealed off the floors, and that's when they realized that they themselves were the experiment. They've been down there for 3 years, and when Layton asks, "Why didn't you try to escape?" she says, "To what?" When Leighton gets all stitched up, he immediately goes to try to find Wilfred, and he finds that locked room that Wilfred is in, and he starts screaming, "Where's Liana?" And Wilfred says she's with all the other little boys and girls. She's probably sleeping right now. Wilfred, though, starts to defend himself. He tells Leighton that he would never separate a mother from her child, so killing Zara was never part of his plan. All he wanted to do was spare New Eden of a full-scale invasion by Milius and his men. He also tells him that the one who killed Zara was a big guy with a rat on his helmet. Leighton, however, continues to try to get in the room, and Wilfred just laughs at him, saying, "This is a really bad plan. I'm the one who could actually take you to Liana. What, you think the Admiral's going to do that? He's not going to do that." But Leighton is enraged, and he knows that Wilfred has no escape. The whole time he was in that room, though, Wilfred was working on getting the communication system back up and running, and he was able to do so. So he's able to radio up the silo to talk to Milius. He asks Milius to take him along once Snowpiercer leaves. That way he can fix Milius' mistakes. But Milius says, "No, Wilfred, you are the mistake." Wilfred, though, starts to mock Milius on the fact that his men don't like him. They're probably not loyal to him. And then he shuts off communication. Milius gets so mad at this that he instructs one of his men to go clear out that floor entirely. And Wilfred is fully aware that that will be the plan. But that was a part of Wilfred's plan, because he knows that the only way to get out of there is on the elevator, and they can't just wait around for the next sample run. He also knows that Leighton is going to help him, because he's the only chance that Leighton has of seeing Liana. And when he tells Leighton this, Leighton begrudgingly agrees that, yeah, he's right. So for the time being, they're allies. As Leighton and Wilfred get acquainted and start to work together, Alex is up the silo and starting to piece together exactly what happened when Big Alice escaped. Through just looking at clues, she knows that somebody sacrificed themselves so Big Alice could leave. And that's when she gets Nema to admit that yes, Ben was the one who sacrificed himself and Snowpiercer escaped. He apologizes for her loss, but says, "This place does have a purpose. I want to show it to you." And he brings her to one of the rockets that they fire off into the sky thanks to Snowpiercer. He explains the mission, but also says that they've been monitoring the effects of the chemical on some of the subjects. And Alex says, "This is more than animal testing, isn't it?" Nema admits, yeah, they had an incident. A couple of his colleagues got trapped in it. They had to close off the bottom floor of the silo. But their sacrifice led them to New Eden. Alex knows that Nema's data is incomplete unless he tests somebody that lived outside. She fits that criteria, so she says, "Okay, come on, let's go finish this thing." And Nema draws her blood. As she prepares to leave, though, she swaps key cards with Nema. So now she has full access to the silo. With this access, Alex gets in the elevator and heads down to those bottom floors that Nema was discussing. And what she finds is surprising. It's Wilfred and Leighton side by side ready to attack because they thought when they heard the elevator that it was Nema's men, but it's not. But upstairs, it doesn't take Nema long to realize that his key card is somebody else's. He checks, and sure enough, he knows that Alex stole his key card and she's down at the bottom floors. So he instructs the soldier to shut the east elevator down. And as she's doing so, Milius walks in and tells Nema some good news. Melanie Cavill's Snowcat was spotted not too far away. Now it's just time to complete the mission. In episode 7, you get some backstory on Milius and how he gained power. It was all thanks to a coup, because Kari was actually in charge, but Milius didn't like the way she was handling things. So, when she went down in the silo, he decided to use the experimental Gemini variant to poison everybody down there. Nema, of course, helped with this, and with Kari out of commission, Milius took it upon himself to take charge. Of course, that was 3 years ago. Present-day Milius is trying to get back Snowpiercer and continue the mission, which is becoming more and more of a problem because of what Leighton, Till, Ben, Ruth, they all did. Because of all that, he's rushing the launch, and when Melanie returns, he continues to rush her. She, having no idea what happened to Ben, Snowpiercer, any of those people, she asks Milius, "When's Snowpiercer arriving?" And he says, "Oh, a couple hours." But when she informs him that she's planning on going aboard and seeing Ben, he says, "No, I think Nima needs the research that you've collected. We have to launch CW7. Melanie, though, having just done a bunch of research, knows that launching CW7 would be a mistake. They need to do more tests. They need to find out exactly how dangerous this thing is. But that's something that Milius does not want to hear at the moment. Milius isn't the only one who's stressed out about Melanie's return, so is Nima. Nima asks Milius, what am I supposed to do? I mean, her daughter is down in the silo and your men are going after her. And Milius tells him, lie? Avoid her? Don't talk to her? This isn't rocket science, man. But it doesn't take Melanie long to figure out that Alex is in fact in the silo. She's looking over the data and sure enough, I mean, the readings are toxic, but she notices that some of the writing is in Alex's handwriting, and she goes and finds Nima. When she finally does find Nima, she is pissed off. She wants answers. She thinks that she was sent out there as a diversion plan. And Nima tells her no, that's not the case. It was Milius and Wilfred's plan to lure Big Alice here. For what reason, I don't know. Now, they escaped, but Alex stayed, and she's stuck on level 3 because she went after Wilfred after Milius put him there. While Melanie leaves and goes to try to figure out a way to get to Alex, Leighton, and Wilfred, along with Kari, are waiting for Milius's men to arrive. The good news is there's only one way in and one way out, so as long as Leighton and company control that elevator door, they should be able to pick them apart, but there's a lot of men coming. What Melanie doesn't know is that Alex is already on her way to Melanie. In fact, she's on her way to the train. Wilfred was able to convince her that the easiest way for her to escape level 3 was to travel through the vents. While Alex does that, Leighton, Kari, and Wilfred fight off Milius's men successfully. After successfully defeating Milius's men, they're able to escape level 3 and start to make their way towards Snowpiercer. When word gets to Nima and Milius about what happened on level 3, Nima starts freaking out a little bit. And Milius, trying to regain order, tells him, as soon as Snowpiercer shows up, get the compound on and launch it. That simple. He doesn't seem all that worried about Wilfred or Leighton. Leighton and Wilfred, however, get held up on their way to Snowpiercer when they run into Melanie. There's a lot of questions going on regarding these three. Melanie had no idea that Liana was taken. She just thought that she was there for the mission at hand to create new Edens. Leighton wondering why, if that's the case, that the Admiral is so gung-ho on launching even though the data hasn't really been fully collected or analyzed yet. And Wilfred says, well, that's because he's a bully. He's not a man of science. He's a paranoid king whose castle is crumbling. Hopefully Alex will beat him to it. She's probably approaching the jetway as we speak. When Leighton asks what about Josie and Liana, who he's still yet to get, Wilfred lies and says, we'll be happy to hold the train. He then heads off to go see the Admiral. Before he leaves, though, he does tell Leighton where he can find Liana and Josie. The thing is, Melanie knows Wilfred, and she knows that something's not right about this situation. They don't really have time to figure out what he may or may not be lying about. They just want to find their people, Josie, Alex, Liana, get on the train, and leave. Meanwhile, you've got Nima, who's trying to beat them there, and who's hell-bent on releasing CW7, regardless of the research that Melanie did, saying that it's not really safe. A short time later, Snowpiercer does arrive. And that's about the time where Leighton finally finds Josie. Immediately, Leighton can tell that something's happened to Josie, and she says, yeah, I've been another experiment. They've been taking my blood, they've been putting it back in. As those two head off to find Liana, they do so with Dr. Hedwood, and after an impassioned speech, Hedwood does give Liana back to Leighton, although it looks like Liana has also been experimented on. Leighton, though, isn't the only person who's found his people. As Wilfred correctly predicted, Melanie finds Alex right near the jetway, and after a big hug, Alex has to be the one to break the news to Melanie that Ben sacrificed himself and died. While all of this is going on, Wilfred is trying to get his train back. He's able to get inside and he starts bossing the men around, telling them not to let Melanie or Leighton or any of his people on the train. But Milius had an idea this was coming. He puts a stop to it right away, putting a gun to Wilfred's back. Milius is going to take care of Wilfred once and for all. At gunpoint, he forces him in an elevator down to one of the floors that is absolutely freezing. The only way to survive this is with one of those suits that Milius's men are always wearing. As Milius is sitting there watching Wilfred essentially freeze to death, he's reveling in it. He's giving him a speech about how this is ironic, and then something shocking happens. Wilfred doesn't die. Because Wilfred, along with Dr. Headwood, have been working on a cold treatment for years, and it's finally working. While Wilfred should be a popsicle at this point, he is far from it, and he attacks Milius, ripping at his breathing tube and letting all that cold air into his helmet. And Wilfred knows exactly what's happening. He starts telling Milius, yeah, right about now, breathing feels like knives in your throat. Your eyeballs are starting to freeze up. He gives him his own speech. He rips off his helmet, and he leaves Milius's dead body down on that floor. And when he heads back up, he takes up right where he left off, giving Milius's men orders on what to do with Snowpiercer. Because after all, he's the creator. At this point, despite Wilfred's best efforts, Josie, Layton, and Liana have been able to sneak on a Snowpiercer. They're heading down train to avoid detection. Meanwhile, up train, Nema is trying to get this train moving, quite literally. But when he gets word that Milius has died, he reminds the men that their mission is still at hand. He orders one of them to head down train, and if he encounters any obstacles, like Wilfred or anybody else, to handle it. Nothing gets in the way of the mission. Nema then orders Snowpiercer to leave. And as he's in Wilfred's library, he's approached by Alex and Melanie, who have both made it on the train, and they've got a lot of questions. The first being, where's Milius? And Nema plays dumb, saying, I'm not quite sure, but I know that Wilfred had a hand. And when they ask where's Wilfred, he says, I'm assuming he's still in the silo. Melanie tells Nema that with Milius out of the way, Snowpiercer is her train. She doesn't want Wilfred anywhere near it, and she wants the men to stand down. Milius seems to leave and go give this message to the men, and Melanie tells Alex, I want you to secure the engine. You're the only person I trust. Alex heads off to go to secure the engine, and that leaves both Melanie and Nema to finally talk about the research, the data, and CW7, whether it's safe or not safe. The two start arguing about this, Nema feeling like the compound is in the safe zone, and Melanie saying, no, we've done more data and research, and it's not safe at all. Melanie gets real bleak, saying that with the toxicity in CW7, it's going to poison everything, and eventually everybody's going to die. The conversation gets more and more and more contentious until finally Nema flips out and says, God damn it, I know what I'm doing. I've been working on Gemini for 15 years. And Melanie questions that, saying, how is that possible? The freeze happened 9 years ago. Nema at this point realizes that he's been caught, to which Melanie just says, as the person in charge of Snowpiercer, I'm telling you, Gemini's not launching until we decide it's safe. But Nema's not about to let Melanie get in the way of his mission. One of the soldiers grabs her, Nema puts on a gas mask, and he unleashes a concoction that knocks Melanie out. While all of that was going on, way down train, Layton, Josie, and Liana are just trying to lay low when there's a breach. Layton goes to check it out, and he finds that it's Wilfred. And he knows that Wilfred came from the outside, which seems impossible. And that's when Wilfred reveals, yeah, it's the cold treatment. We gave it to Josie. We even gave it to Liana. To which Layton gets so mad. He wants to kill Wilfred, and he's got a gun, so he can. But Wilfred asks if he could indulge him a bit and let him smoke one joint before dying. What Layton doesn't know is that joint is laced with poison. He finds out shortly after Wilfred lights up. But as Wilfred is puffing away and slowly dying away, he does reveal to Layton that while everybody was looking at him and looking at Milius, they should have been looking at Nema. Because he broke the world, and now his pride is getting in the way of fixing it. And then finally over with New Eden, as Osweiler is telling everybody about the bombs that they're surrounded by, they get a radio from Big Alice. Initially, they're pumped. Big Alice is right around the corner. All she has to do is cross a bridge, and Big Alice is returned, as has the power source to New Eden. But then Sykes says, no, we can't. I mean, the bombs. Tell Big Alice to wait. We need to do something about it. They decide to come clean to the community about the bombs, but Javi assures everybody that they're going to take care of it. Big Alice is right around the corner. She's going to return, and the power will be back. But Javi and the group, they're working a little too slow for Ruth, Till, and everybody else on Big Alice. They finally decide, you know what, we'll just walk the bridge. But before they can even do that, they hear a loud bang, and there's smoke in the distance. Because as Javi was working on one of those bombs, it went off. Now in episode 8, Javi didn't die from that explosion. He is knocked out a bit. It was a close call, but he survived. After getting back to New Eden, they radio to Big Alice that the route is clear, they can come home. And when everybody gets off Big Alice, they are greeted like heroes coming home. Shortly after this, though, a lot of the group has questions like, where's Alex? Where's Leighton? And Ruth tells them that they didn't make it, but it's just a long story. And she has questions like, where's Roach? And Osweiler says, I lost him in a storm. The only question, though, that Till has is, where's Audrey? Because this whole time, the only thing she's wanted to do is get back to her. Audrey, however, is a little bit reluctant to talk to Till because she's ashamed of how she now looks with those chemical burns. Till, though, could not care less because she loves her. Ruth then fills everybody on Milius, the mission, and the big question is whether Melanie and Alex are actually involved in this. No one's quite sure what to do, but they know that Milius and his men are on the way, or at least they think. They don't know the status of Milius. Osweiler actually suggests just abandoning New Eden, but they say, no, we can't do that because Ben sacrificed himself so that we could have this opportunity. And Ben's death is hitting Javi really, really hard. He's able to push through this, though, reconnecting Big Alice's power to the town and firing it up. But the big issue is still that the town is going to eventually be attacked. Now, they think it's coming from Milius, and what they don't know is it's coming from Nima. Nima's been able to keep what happened to Melanie a secret from Alex, who is currently running the train. And while she's doing that, he gathers a group of Milius's former soldiers along with Dr. Hedwood and a game plan on how to take Big Alice back. As they talk about potential options, Dr. Hedwood says, just send Alex. It'll be fewer casualties. They're not going to hurt their own, and maybe she can convince them to give Big Alice to you. The other option is just exploding the bombs and burying the town. The good news for Nima is he has a little bit of time to decide what to do. They, though, aren't the only ones who are game planning on what to do. The next day, New Eden is doing the exact same thing, and Sykes has a great idea. They're basically going to do what Leighton did down on floor 3. They're going to give Nima and his men one way in. That is it. But as Sykes is pitching this idea, there's a little bit of commotion, and that's because someone has shown up at the front gate. And to everybody's surprise, it's Roach. Not only is Roach back, he's brought Leighton, Josie, and Liana, and Roach is wearing one of Milius's men's suits. That's because the car that Leighton, Liana, and Josie were in was left behind, and they slowly started to freeze. As a last-ditch resort, Leighton radioed to the silo hoping to be saved, and they were, but they were saved surprisingly by Roach, who was kind of a Trojan horse at this point. Everybody's obviously relieved to see Leighton, Liana, and Josie, but everybody's really pumped up to see Roach because that guy just went missing out of nowhere. Once the commotion kind of dies down, Leighton gets together with Ruth. He tells her about Nima taking charge, and his best guess is they have 24 hours before he arrives. Because of this, they gather the town council. What they're planning on doing is moving Big Alice to the other side of town, right near the bombs. That way, it's a deterrent for setting those bombs off. Then they're going to do Sykes' plan of giving the group one way in, and they ambush them. One of the ways that this is going to work is someone's going to have to be monitoring the track switch. That's the key to this whole thing, and Josie volunteers to do that. Everybody knows the importance of this, and everybody knows that they need to get ready immediately. The first thing they do is move Big Alice. Josie takes command of the control switch, and she's even got security. Boki's going to make sure that nothing happens to her. When New Eden moved Big Alice, word got to Nima. One of the reasons why he wants to launch Gemini so badly is because the atmospheric pressure, this is the best time to do it, and if they miss this window, they're going to have to wait 5 more years. Now with Big Alice in the way of those bombs, it doesn't give Nima a ton of options. It kind of forces his hand to use Alex the way that Dr. Hedwood suggested. He's even able to convince Alex to volunteer for this instead of telling her to go. So Alex, along with a group of soldiers, are going to head into New Eden covertly, and Alex is going to take Big Alice, completely unaware of the fact that she's getting played by Nima. While one engineer goes after Big Alice, another one is really concerned about what they just did. That's Javi. He doesn't think that moving Big Alice is enough, because if Nima and his men get Big Alice, then they can just move Big Alice and detonate the bombs. Javi's adding a lot of undue pressure on himself because of Ben's sacrifice. He feels like he owes it to Ben to save everybody, so Ben didn't die for nothing. But this undue pressure actually leads to a breakthrough. Javi realizes that they don't have time to disarm all the bombs, but what they can do is change the frequency. So Javi heads off to see if he can do that. Everybody else in New Eden is gearing up for battle. They know that this could be their last night. With everybody gathered in town hall, Roach turns to Ruth and says, "The mood seems a little bit off right now. Maybe you should say something to inspire the troops." So she does. She says, "Hey, everybody, maybe Roach can entertain us with his tale of how he survived." And Roach just laughs, but he says, "Yeah, okay, sure." He's tried to tell this story a few times, but he's gotten distracted. The Cliff Notes version is, he fell, he was taken by the soldiers back to the silo, and he was thrown in one of those rooms. But when there was a commotion, he escaped. He was trying to make his way through the silo, he came a bunch of soldiers, he defeated all of them, and he stole some of their gear, posing as them, waiting to get back to New Eden. Roach is very charismatic with this, and it does change the mood in the room. The next day, however, Nima and Alex come calling. Now, Alex knows what she's doing is tough. She knows this is not a good outcome for New Eden, but she thinks that by doing this, she's actually going to end up saving a bunch of lives. So in the morning, she sneaks in, but when she goes to find the track switch, all she finds are Josie and Boki, and they're surprised to see her, but she tries to muscle her way into the room, and Boki puts a stop to it. Nima, though, had snipers positioned around New Eden, and they started firing. One of them hits Boki, and Alex starts to take cover, but one of the soldiers grabs her and throws her in the room, telling her to finish the job. New Eden's council wasn't planning on any of this. In fact, they were having a little bit of a toast to the fallen people that helped build New Eden, and that's when the fighting broke out. While taken a bit off guard, they were planning on this. They've been in fights before, after all. And when they get outside, they quickly realize that they are taking on sniper shots, but they also realize that they're in a fight for their lives. They all grab weapons that were prepared for them the night before, and they head out in the streets, but trying to keep their head on a swivel and waiting for Nima's men to strike, while also trying not to get shot. While New Eden starts to fight back, Alex is told to switch the track at gunpoint. In episode 9, Melanie wakes up, and she's got a note from Nima apologizing for what he did, knocking her out, but as she's reading it, she's unaware of the fact of everything that's going on in New Eden. The fight for New Eden, the fact that Alex is being held at gunpoint to switch the train tracks, which, by the way, she does not do. She actually sabotages the train switch so that they can't move Big Alice. Yeah, Melanie's unaware of all of it, but New Eden is fighting back. It's not like they're not taking casualties. Boki is hurt, but Josie's able to get him to safety. And there's a lot of other close calls thanks to that sniper on the ridge, but they do have some things going for him. Like Osweiler was able to get a radio, and he's able to hear all of Nima's people and what they're up to. Because they know exactly where the sniper is, Till is going to sneak up on that ridge and try to take him out. While she's doing that, Javi thinks he's found a way around the bombs. He thinks he has an idea on how to change the transmitter so that when Nima tries to set those bombs off, they won't work. The problem is, in order for Javi to be able to do that, he needs to get in his shop, which is where the track switch is, which is where Alex is being held. So they essentially need to free Alex, get Javi in there to be able to build this device to jam the bombs. It's around this time where Nima, who is on Snowpiercer, he's nowhere near the fight, he goes to Melanie and tries to get her to convince Alex to fix the track switch, get on his side. He knows that this fight hasn't exactly gone his way so far. It's not like he can't win it, but he slightly underestimated the power of the New Eden residents. He knows that if Melanie can talk sense into Alex and they move Big Alice, it'll save bloodshed, but it could also save the world, or at least his mission. Melanie, however, tells him that New Eden isn't about to just stand by and let him steal their engine twice. To which Nima says, well, they're already standing by. I mean, they're pinned down via sniper rifles, and it'll stay that way until we're through. Melanie, though, doesn't care. She tells him no. And he says, okay, well, if you're not going to help me, then I have no reason to hold the town or its residents hostage anymore. I'll just bury them. That gives Melanie a lot to think about. While she decides what exactly she's going to do with Nima's proposition, Leighton was able to free Alex. Leighton is able to get Alex over to the town hall, but at this point he's really playing general. He's trying to keep his troops alive and in line with the mission. Meanwhile, Alex has a lot of questions, mainly about how he got back, but also what happened to Wilfred. And that's when Leighton has to tell her Wilfred died. Alex tries to act like this doesn't bother her, but it does, because, like it or not, Joseph Wilfred was the closest thing she had to a father. So she is upset by it, and Leighton can tell. But Leighton also has people he needs to think about in this moment, mainly Osweiler, who's out there in the streets being the bait. Leighton figures it's probably best to let Alex just sit there and process the news that he just gave her, so he goes to head out and help Osweiler in this moment. But that's when he gets a radio call from Javi saying, hey, don't come out here because you've got one of Nima's men coming inside the town hall. So he has to hunker down with Alex and game plan on how to take this guy out who's got an assault rifle. The best course of action they get is to just make a break for it and run. It works for Alex, but it doesn't quite work for Leighton. He does end up getting into a fight with the soldier, but Leighton comes out on top. And at the same time, Till is up on the mountainside and she's been able to take out the sniper. So things are really turning towards New Eden's direction. It seems like they've at least won the first battle, and the town council meets up and tries to game plan on what they're going to do next. Leighton tells him that Javi's currently in the shop, he's working on the bombs, and the plan stays the same. Try to get them to funnel down Main Street, and then they ambush. But Alex cuts him off and says, Nima's plan isn't going to be what you think. He is determined to shoot that rocket off at all costs. What I did to the track switch is only going to hold for so long, and if he gets to the engine, he's going to eventually get past that. For the council, this just shows the importance of them winning this fight. Now, the good news is Javi was able to get that jammer working. But the rest of the members of New Eden, they wait. They wait for Nima to show up with his men and walk down Main Street so they can ambush them. But when Nima does show up, they're a little surprised because there's Nima and there's all of his soldiers, but there's also Melanie. Melanie gave in to Nima's demands. She's not happy about it, but she, a lot like Alex, figured it was the easiest way to save some lives. What she wasn't expecting was how Nima planned on taking New Eden, and mainly taking Big Alice. He wasn't going to ask for Big Alice. He was going to use chemical warfare. As soon as Nima and his men get through the gates, they all put on gas masks and they all start gassing the town. Now, Leighton saw this coming about 30 seconds before it happened, so he tells everybody, run. But for a lot of them, it's too late. They're knocked out. Alex is saved, but only by Melanie, who gives her a gas mask and says, you're coming with me. It doesn't take Nima more than a few minutes to knock out most of the residents of New Eden and force the rest of them into the town hall. And while the residents wake up and gather themselves, Nima's busy retrofitting Big Alice for the launch. Things are looking real bleak for the members of New Eden. Nima and Melanie now have both engines and they're stuck in the town hall train car with gunmen outside. There's not a lot of options for them. One of the minor issues they have is, whose idea was this? They question whether Melanie or Alex or both had a hand in this. And gassing the town was actually Melanie's idea. When Nima gassed her, she knew that Nima had a safe weapon, so she was able to convince him that instead of using bullets, use gas, it's safer, it's less bloodshed. But when Nima gassed Melanie, he also gassed any chance that Melanie would ever help him. Sure, her and Alex are in Big Alice right now, but on the surface, while it looks like they're helping Nima, in reality, they're trying to sabotage what he wants to do. They're able to talk about this while Dr. Hedwood and Nima tour New Eden. Josie watches these two stroll the town, and all she wants to do is rip Dr. Hedwood's head off. While many people's mission is to preserve New Eden, for Josie, her mission is simple. Get the revenge she feels like she deserves on this doctor who's used her body as a playground. Knowing this, Ruth goes to check on her, and while Josie says she's fine, it's clear that Josie's attitude has completely changed. Ruth then heads up to talk to Leighton about exactly how they're going to get out of this jam when they get a radio call from Melanie, and she immediately apologizes for gassing the town but explains it was the safest route. She then tells them that her plan is to bring Snowpiercer into the town and have them board the train and put up a fight against Nema. The big issue for Layton and his people is just getting out that door. Layton knows that as soon as they open the door and charge into town, Nema's people are just going to shoot him up. But there's one trick up Layton's sleeve. It's Javi. Javi's the only one that wasn't caught up in this fight. He was busy trying to jam the signals of the bombs and getting an antenna up on the mountains. So he's actually outside. Layton tells Javi that he needs him to get a bomb, put it in the center of the town to use as a distraction. The bomb then detonates, it distracts all of Nema's people, and they can rush out. And that's exactly what they do when Snowpiercer arrives. Everybody rushes into the center of the town. They go to attack Nema's people, and they realize that Nema's people might have guns, but they have no ammo. They're not in the clear yet, though. Nema has more soldiers. And what Layton and his people have to do is charge their way into that train, which is nothing new to Layton, but it's still not fun. Most of them are able to successfully get onto the train, but when Nema realizes what's happening, he orders the train to leave immediately. And once they get out of the blast radius, he tells his people to set the bombs off. Of course, they don't go off because Javi already took care of that. When this happens, Nema is furious. He turns to go yell at both Melanie and Alex, feeling like they had a hand in it, but Melanie and Alex are gone. They've taken off to go down train and help their friends. And finally, there was a little bit of a reveal in this episode. Nema is actually Alex's biological father. Nema and Melanie, they knew each other from college, and she felt like he'd be a good match because the Nema that she knew in college was a great guy. He wasn't this thing that he is now. So that's a bit of a buzzkill for Alex. She finds out that her father figure is dead, and then she finds out that her actual father is trying to, quote-unquote, save the world, but in reality will probably end up killing it if he's successful. And in the series finale, as the members of New Eden fight their way through Snowpiercer, Melanie and Alex are underneath the train, and the weirdest thing happens. They hear a commotion and they have to hide, but they see that it's Nema fleeing Big Alice, which is super bizarre. It's basically like he's just abandoned ship. When they get there, they find out the reason why he abandoned Big Alice. He took the controls. He literally ripped it out. He retrofitted Big Alice so that Big Alice is really just a vessel at this point. It's being controlled by Snowpiercer. Alice is convinced that she can figure this out. Nobody knows Big Alice better than her, but Melanie isn't so sure they have enough time. And as Alex is ripping wires and putting some in different places, she reveals that Wilfred is dead, and that's news to Melanie. She knows that this is a hard moment for her daughter. While she didn't like Wilfred, she knows what Wilfred meant to Alex, but all that Alex seems to be concerned with is stopping Nema. Meanwhile, Melanie's plan is to link up with Layton and his people and stop the rocket. Melanie agrees to try Alex's way, and they'll try to reboot Big Alice and hopefully get her working in their direction. And Layton and his people are making their way up train. They're fighting like it's the old days, but this does come at a cost when Nema's men use chemicals and Ruth is captured. Layton, though, was thinking just like Melanie. While Melanie wanted to link up with Layton, Layton wanted to link up with Melanie because he knows that the only person that can stop that rocket would be Melanie. There is some concern about Ruth, but right now, Layton reminds everybody that the priority is stopping that rocket. The members of New Eden split up at this point, and Nema's found out about the fact that they're about 45 cars away. He is concerned because he's a little bitch boy. He does have a trump card, though, and that's the fact that they do have Ruth. So if Layton were to reach the engine of Snowpiercer, Nema could use that to deter him from taking it. As Nema is just preparing for his launch because that's really his priority, Layton, Javi, and Till have made their way to Big Alice, and they meet up with Melanie and Alex, and they see exactly what they're dealing with. As they're discussing what their next step is going to be, Nema surprises everybody by taking Snowpiercer off the track. Snowpiercer is literally driving on a frozen ocean. At this point, Melanie knows that they have about 3 hours to stop that rocket. They do have ways of stopping this, or at the very least stalling it. Nema has a briefcase that he's going to launch the rocket with. If they get that, they're good. There's also a hard line in his Snowpiercer. If they connect to that, maybe they have a chance. But possibly their best course of action is to sever comms to the engine. That way Nema has to come to them. Javi's going to go work on severing those comms, while Melanie and Alex continue to work in Big Alice. Javi and Layton have a problem, though. They get word that about 35 cars down, there's a group of soldiers just waiting for them. So they're going to have to deal with that mess. It's not all bad, though. Above train, they do get one of their own back. Ruth was approached by Nema to be the leader of the world, basically. He tells her that once he thaws the world, he's not built to lead, and she's already leading New Eden. And why he did this was because he really wants Ruth to make an announcement for the members of New Eden to stand down and let this launch happen. But Ruth said, "No, kick rocks." And as she was being transported, she ran into Sykes and a few others that were able to free her. Unfortunately, though, everybody is running out of time except Nema. Even Alex, who wanted to stay and make this Big Alice dream work, has to admit, yeah, we should probably get out of here and pivot to a plan B. Everybody seems to be headed in one direction, and that's towards the rocket. Leighton and his people were able to fight through Nema's men by using their own weapon against them, gassing them. Ruth and the people above train, they're also fighting back, heading towards the rocket, as is Melanie and Alex, and of course, as is Nema. And Javi was able to get to the control panel, and he starts to work on severing the comms to the engine. He's doing this with security from Osweiler and Till, who are posing as Nema's men. They do have to abandon him, though, once Nema's men actually walk by and tell both of them to get in line. They don't realize that they're just actually fighting for the other side. Even without his security, Javi is able to sever those comms, and when Nema goes to launch the rocket, he's unable to. It's going to force Nema to the actual physical rocket and hook it up that way. The first ones to arrive in the rocket room, though, are Melanie and Alex, and what they have to do is physically take out a bunch of different canisters, very carefully. They, of course, have to do this without getting caught. As they work on it, unaware that Nema is headed their way, and likely unaware of where Ruth and Leighton and everybody else is, there's one person who's not focused on the rocket at all. They're focused on revenge, and that is Josie. Josie has one thing on her mind, and that is finding Dr. Hedwood and killing her. And she does just that. She finds Dr. Hedwood weirdly talking to the shoes of her dead husband, and she extracts revenge. So Dr. Hedwood is not going to see the rocket launch, which is horrible timing, because Nema was able to hook it up, and everybody's got about 10 minutes until this thing goes in the sky. He, however, goes to check on the actual physical rocket, and that's when he catches Melanie and Alex trying to take the canisters out, and they weren't able to get all of them. And Nema has a gun, so they don't have many options. The only course of action they have is to try to talk him down, as he's forcing them to put the canisters back in. At first, they just start to try to get in his head and say they know what he's doing, but eventually he gets so rattled that they try to explain to him this isn't going to work. He's trying to make up for a mistake he made 15 years ago. He's grasping at straws. And it seems like they are able to get through to him, but he says, "Look, guys, even if I want to stop it, I can't. This thing is going to go off, and I think you guys should run." With that bit of news, Melanie and Alex do take off. They get the hell out of that car, and when the rocket doors open up, it exposes Nema to that cold air, so even he isn't able to see his rocket actually take off. He's frozen to death pretty quickly. But everybody else in Snowpiercer, they do hear the rocket go off, and they have to just watch it go in the sky. But then, it doesn't explode in the atmosphere. It falls out of the sky, exploding on the ground. And that's because Alex, using her expertise, decided to give them a failsafe. She messed with one of the rocket's panels that affected the launch, and that didn't allow it to actually explode in the sky like Nema wanted. The apocalypse is officially dodged, and everybody takes Snowpiercer and heads back to New Eden. They, of course, have no idea how long the New Eden pocket is going to last, but they're going to enjoy every second of it. Some of Nema's people actually join everybody in New Eden, because it turns out they're not horrible people at all. They're actually very nice people. They were just on the wrong side. They, of course, can't let Snowpiercer just sit idle, so Javi and Sykes are actually going to take it around and just keep the engine running, so that if New Eden does end up failing, they're able to get out of there quickly. They all get together in the bar that first night back. Osweiler plays the piano, Audrey sings, and everybody's happy. And that is the end of Snowpiercer. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you like this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. And let me know if you liked how the season wrapped up. I personally thought that season 4 kind of sucked, if I'm being honest. But that's just one man's opinion. Let me know if you liked it. Go buy merch. Go buy a mug. Go buy like a shirt. Hoodie season's coming up. I have those as well. Look, I have bills to pay, folks. And I'm not too proud to beg. So please, go buy something. I'd really appreciate it. But just know that if you reached this far into the recap, I really do appreciate you just checking it out and sticking with me. And I'd really appreciate it if you liked, subscribed, commented, shared, tell all your friends, and most importantly, just let the ads run. I mean, literally, just click it and then walk away. I'm cool with that as well.